They said friendship had no price. They said diplomacy was built on trust. But today, a different message echoes across borders. India has been hit hard. A 25% tariff slapped by former US President Donald Trump, punishing India for refusing to bow down, for daring to chart its own path, for buying oil from Russia in the face of Western pressure. But is this really just about oil? Or is it about control, sovereignty, and the price of standing tall? Let's break it down, not just as news, but as a lesson in courage, independence, and global politics. When a nation decides to stand on its own terms, it invites more than just challenges. It invites judgment, retaliation, and in some cases, punishment. India, in choosing to prioritize its national interest by purchasing oil from Russia, has taken such a path. It wasn't just about energy. It was about sovereignty. It was about not allowing another superpower to dictate every decision that affects millions back home. The 25% tariff imposed by Donald Trump isn't just a financial blow, it's a message, a signal to the world that defiance comes at a price. But here's the truth, hidden beneath the surface. Nations that choose sovereignty always pay a price, and yet they are the ones who ultimately define history. There is no greatness in obedience when obedience means betrayal of your people's needs. India saw an opportunity to secure affordable energy, reduce dependency on volatile markets, and stabilize its economy. It wasn't a rebellious act, it was a responsible one. And yet it was met with aggression, not understanding, with punishment, not dialogue. That's the reality of global politics. It's never just about what's right or wrong. It's about power, who has it, and who dares to resist it. And so India stood up, not in arrogance, but in necessity. And the world watched. Some mocked, some warned, and some waited for it to fail. But the message India sent was powerful. We will not compromise our sovereignty for the comfort of others. We will not abandon our independence to make someone else feel secure. That is the true test of a nation's strength, not its GDP, not its military, but its ability to say no when yes would be easier. There will always be costs. Economic backlash, diplomatic cold shoulders, even sanctions. But there's one cost no country should be willing to pay, the cost of losing its voice. And India refused to pay that. In a world where superpowers expect obedience in exchange for favor, choosing autonomy is an act of courage. India's decision was a declaration that its policies are not for sale, and its priorities are not up for negotiation. That's where real freedom lies, not in the absence of consequences, but in the willingness to face them head-on. Let them impose tariffs. Let them raise voices in protest. But let it also be known, India chose to serve its people first, and in doing so, reminded the world of what leadership truly means. It's not about pleasing allies. It's about protecting your people, not about gaining applause, but earning respect. And sometimes respect only comes when you refuse to bow. This moment will pass, tariffs will rise and fall, but the lesson remains: sovereignty demands sacrifice. And those who embrace it, even at great cost, shape the future, not just for themselves, but for every voice that dares to rise in a world that often demands silence. In international politics, almost nothing is accidental. Every move is calculated, every word carefully chosen, and every penalty strategically placed. When Donald Trump imposed a 25% tariff on India for purchasing oil from Russia, it wasn't merely a reaction. It was a power move, a reminder to the world that in the geopolitical game, stepping out of line can cost you. This is not about economics alone. This is about control, about influence, about reminding nations who they're expected to answer to. The tariff is not just financial pressure, it's psychological warfare. India didn't just buy oil, it bought independence, it bought leverage, it bought the right to choose without waiting for Western validation. And that's what rattled the foundation, because the moment a country like India, a rising power, a massive market, a sovereign democracy, chooses to go against US pressure, it signals to others that dependence is optional. That's dangerous to the ones who've spent decades positioning themselves as the global referee. Trump's tariff is not punishment for oil, it's punishment for disobedience. But here's what many fail to see. The real power lies in the ability to choose, to say no, even when the world expects you to say yes. That is what India did. In a climate where nations are being forced to pick sides in a war they didn't start, where neutrality is no longer respected, India made a choice to stay committed to its national interest, not for drama, not for conflict, but for its people. It's easy to follow the loudest voice. It's harder to think for yourself. But that's what makes a nation powerful. Not the weapons it holds, not the alliances it signs, but the values it stands for. India didn't seek to provoke America. It sought to preserve its economy, to reduce fuel prices, to protect its industries and farmers, and yet it was met with hostility, not understanding. That's because control has always been the currency of global dominance. For decades, powerful nations have operated with the assumption that loyalty is automatic, that economic leverage ensures political obedience. But the world is changing. Emerging powers are no longer willing to be satellites orbiting a larger star. They want their own gravity, their own space, their own voice. The power game is being exposed. It's no longer about who shouts the loudest. It's about who stands the longest. And India's choice, bold as it was, proves that global politics is shifting. No longer is it enough to wave a flag of freedom while punishing others for practicing it. If a partnership only works when one side obeys, then it was never a partnership to begin with. So yes, the tariff stings, but it also clarifies, it separates true allies from conditional friends. It exposes the price of independence, and in doing so, it teaches a deeper lesson. The most powerful nations are not those who control others, but those who cannot be controlled. Once, they stood together on the global stage, shaking hands, signing deals, posing for cameras, and calling each other strategic partners. But partnerships built on convenience often crumble under pressure. The moment India made a decision that didn't align with America's interests, choosing to buy oil from Russia, it was no longer seen as a friend, but as a problem. And now that problem is being addressed with a 25% tariff, a diplomatic slap that speaks volumes without needing to say a word. When allies turn adversaries, the message is clear. Loyalty is demanded, not earned. This shift reveals something deeply unsettling about the nature of modern alliances. They are not always rooted in mutual respect. Too often, they're transactional, maintained only as long as one party falls in line with the other's agenda. And the moment that balance is disturbed, threats replace treaties and punishment replaces dialogue. India now finds itself facing such a crossroads, not because it betrayed anyone, but because it dared to think for itself. That is the real offense. Not the oil, not the deal, but the decision, the autonomy, the refusal to be dictated to. India chose its own path. It prioritized affordable energy, national interest, and economic stability over appeasing a superpower. And for that, the mask of partnership slipped. What stands in front of us now is not diplomacy, it's dominance. And yet, there's something powerful in this moment. A kind of awakening. A realization that relationships based on pressure are not relationships at all. They're imbalances. India is learning, as many other nations are, that sometimes being treated as an equal means walking away when you're not. That true friendship must leave room for disagreement. And if it doesn't, then it's simply another form of control dressed in the costume of cooperation. The truth is, every nation will one day face this moment when it must choose between comfort and courage, between being liked and being respected, between staying silent or standing up. India has chosen the latter. It's not an easy choice. It comes with consequences, economic ones, diplomatic ones. But in return, it gains something far more valuable: dignity, integrity, the respect that comes from refusing to compromise your core values. Let the world watch. Let the critics speak. Let the tariffs come. Because what India has made clear is this: partnerships are welcome, but not at the cost of sovereignty. Friendship is appreciated, but not if it demands submission. And global cooperation must be mutual, not conditional. This moment will be remembered not for the tariff, but for the strength it revealed, for the courage of a nation to stand its ground, even when the ground shook beneath its feet. In the end, history doesn't remember those who surrendered under pressure. It remembers those who refused. Is it fair to be punished for looking out for your people? Is it just to impose penalties on a country simply because it chose the most practical, affordable energy source for its growing population? These are the uncomfortable questions rising from the 25% tariffs slapped on India for purchasing oil from Russia. This isn't just about economics, it's about fairness, justice, and the fundamental right of a nation to make choices that serve its citizens first. In a world where power often outweighs principle, India's move was not just practical, it was necessary, and the backlash it received exposes the double standards deeply embedded in international diplomacy. Let's be honest. When a Western country trades with controversial partners, it's called strategy. But when a non-Western nation like India does the same, it's suddenly labeled a betrayal. Why? Because fairness in global politics has always been filtered through power. The powerful expect the rest of the world to follow instructions, not ask questions. But India did ask questions. It evaluated its needs, it chose what was best for its economy, and in doing so, it crossed an invisible line, the line of obedience. The oil deal with Russia wasn't about picking sides. It was about survival, about stabilizing prices, reducing inflation, and ensuring energy availability for a nation of over 1.4 billion people. That's not disloyalty, that's leadership. Yet instead of being respected for protecting its national interest, India is being penalized. That is the irony of this moment. The very country that champions freedom is now punishing another for exercising it. But here's what must be understood. This penalty isn't just a blow to India's economy, it's an attack on its autonomy. It's a warning sent to all independent voices. Choose your people, and you'll face consequences. And yet, India did choose, and will continue to choose, because at some point, every nation must decide whether it wants to be popular or whether it wants to be principled. This tariff is not a sign of India's failure. It's proof of its growing strength. You don't try to control something that doesn't threaten your control. And India, by asserting its own direction, has become too independent to ignore. That's why the punishment is loud. It's meant to discourage others from doing the same. But if anything, it sets an example that fairness isn't given. It's demanded. And it starts by refusing to bow. Let the world know, choosing your people over foreign pressure isn't rebellion. It's responsibility. And if fairness won't come from the top down, then it will rise from the ground up, from nations that lead with their heads held high, even when their hands are tied. India's decision may have triggered penalties, but it also ignited something more powerful, a global conversation about fairness, freedom, and the true cost of doing what's right. India is no stranger to challenges. Throughout its history, it has faced colonization, wars, sanctions, and skepticism. And yet it has always risen stronger, wiser, more determined. The 25% tariff imposed by Donald Trump is just another storm in a long journey of resilience. Yes, it's heavy. Yes, it will sting economically. But India has faced worse. And every time the world thought it would kneel, it stood taller. This moment is no different. Because true truth is not proven in times of comfort, it's revealed in the fire of adversity. This tariff isn't the end, it's the beginning of a stronger, more self-reliant India. It's a wake-up call, not just for politicians, but for the people, the industries, the entrepreneurs, and the youth. It says, the world may not always support your independence, but that doesn't mean you stop being independent. In fact, it's in these very moments that a country must double down on its path, invest more in its resources, depend less on foreign approval, and rise through innovation, unity, and grit. There's a bigger lesson here. When you choose your own people over global expectations, the world doesn't always cheer. Sometimes it punishes. But that's exactly why those choices matter, because they're not made for applause, they're made for integrity. India's leadership made a call not based on popularity but on purpose. And while the global response may be harsh, the local reward is clear. Energy security, price stability, and a strong message that India will never be a puppet to power. This moment should ignite a fire within the hearts of every Indian. Not a fire of anger, but of purpose, of innovation, of national pride. If the global market imposes tariffs, then India must create alternatives. If doors close, India must build new ones. It's been done before. It can be done again. Every developed nation once faced moments when the world said you can't, and every great nation became great when it replied, watch us. Let this challenge not weaken us, but sharpen us. Let it inspire a renewed commitment to make in India, to energy independence, to global diplomacy on our own terms. Because the world respects one thing above all: resilience. The kind of resilience that doesn't just react, but rebuilds, that doesn't just survive, but thrives. This is not a time to be discouraged. This is a time to prepare, to focus, to elevate. Because history has shown India never breaks. It bends, adapts, and rises higher than before. Let the tariff be what it is. But let India's response be something the world didn't expect. Not anger, not submission, but a quiet, powerful rise that turns pressure into progress and obstacles into opportunity. The storm has come, but the mountain still stands. And when it clears, the world will see. India did not just endure, it evolved. This is not just a headline, it's a warning, a wake-up call, and a declaration. India is not just a market, it is a voice, and no tariff can silence it.